It is a crisp morning in Cannes, France, April 13th, 1888. The air smells of sea salt and mimosa, a stark contrast to the acrid scent of sulfur and black powder that usually clings to the clothes of Alfred Nobel. At 54 years old, Alfred is one of the wealthiest men in Europe. He is a titan of industry, a man whose mind operates with the precision of the clock ticking softly on the mantle. He sits alone at his breakfast table, the porcelain cool against his fingertips. The house is quiet, save for the distant murmur of servants. This is the sanctuary of the dynamite king, the man who tamed the volatile fury of nitroglycerin and packaged it into safe, transportable sticks that are currently blasting railway tunnels through the Alps and carving shipping canals across continents. But there is a shadow over this morning. Alfred is grieving. His brother, Ludwig, has just died in this very city. The loss is heavy, a dull ache in his chest that makes the coffee taste bitter. Alfred expects the morning papers to be filled with respectful eulogies for Ludwig, a man who built a petroleum empire in Russia and was known for his business acumen. Alfred unfolds the newspaper, the Indépendance Belge, expecting to read a tribute to his brother's life. He adjusts his spectacles, the newsprint ink fresh and dark against the pale paper. He is looking for comfort, for public validation of his family's contributions to the modern world. He believes they are pioneers, engineers of the future, men who move mountains to connect humanity. He does not know that a lazy journalist in a frantic newsroom hundreds of miles away has made a catastrophic error. In the rush to meet a deadline, the reporter confused the two Nobel brothers. Hearing that a Nobel had died in Cannes, the journalist assumed it was Alfred, the famous inventor of explosives, and pulled a pre-written obituary from the archives. It was a piece written in advance, waiting for the day the dynamite king would take his final breath. The journalist didn't check the facts. He didn't verify the body. He simply sent the copy to the press, sealing a narrative that was never meant to be read by the subject himself. Alfred smooths the crease of the paper. His eyes scan the columns. He finds the headline. He stops. The breath catches in his throat, a sudden sharp hitch that has nothing to do with grief and everything to do with shock. He blinks, thinking perhaps the grief has clouded his vision. He reads it again. It is not an error of a single letter. It is a fundamental erasure of his identity. The newspaper believes he is dead. He is sitting there, heart beating, lungs filling with air, while the world believes he is a corpse. But as his eyes drift down from the headline to the opening sentence, the shock of his premature death dissolves into something far colder, far more terrifying. The world isn't mourning him. The world is celebrating. The headline screams in bold, unforgiving French, "Le marchand de la mort est mort." The merchant of death is dead. Alfred freezes. The room seems to tilt. The sounds of the morning, the birds outside, the clinking of china fade into a ringing silence. He forces himself to read on, though every word feels like a physical blow. The article does not speak of his brilliance in chemistry. It does not mention the blasting caps that made mining safer. It does not list the tunnels that connect nations or the infrastructure built on the bedrock of his inventions. Instead, the obituary is a savage, dripping indictment. It describes him as a man who became rich by finding ways to kill more people faster than ever before. He reads the sentence again, finding ways to kill more people faster. Is this who he is? Is this the sum total of his 54 years on Earth? He looks at his hands, the hands of an inventor, a creator, a man who wrote poetry in his youth and dreamed of literature. The newspaper tells him that these hands are stained with the blood of thousands. He sees himself through the eyes of the public for the first time, and the reflection is monstrous. He is not the titan of industry. He is a villain, a war profiteer, a merchant of death. The irony is suffocating. He He had always justified his work with the belief that his explosives would end war by making it too terrible to wage. He thought he was creating a deterrent. The world sees only the carnage. A cold sweat breaks across his forehead. This isn't just an insult. It is a prophecy written in ink. If he were to actually die at this moment, choking on a piece of bread, or his heart simply stopping, this is it. This paragraph is his legacy. There will be no corrections, no, wait, he also loved peace, no footnotes about his philanthropy. History will remember him solely as the man who industrialized slaughter. The horror of it is absolute. He is staring into his own grave, and he sees no flowers, only the debris of destruction. The psychological collapse is internal and violent. He feels a desperate, clawing need to scream, to run to the newspaper office and shake the editor, to explain the complexity of his work. But the paper sits there, silent and final. It is a mirror he cannot look away from, and the face looking back is a stranger he detests. He realizes with terrifying clarity that wealth cannot buy a reputation once you are in the ground. He has millions of crowns, but he is morally bankrupt in the eyes of history. The merchant of death is the only name he has left. The shock of that morning does not fade with the sunset. It festers. For 7 years, the obituary haunts Alfred Nobel. It stands behind him in his laboratory. It sits with him at state dinners. He becomes a man possessed, not by the invention of new weapons, but by the desperate need to wash the blood from his name. He knows he cannot uninvent dynamite. The explosions will continue, the wars will go on, but he can change the narrative. He can force the world to speak his name with reverence instead of revulsion. He begins to formulate a plan, a counterstrike against history itself. He works in secret. He trusts no one with the full scope of his idea, not his family, who expect to inherit his massive empire, and certainly not the public. He travels, he writes, he calculates. The fortune is immense, accumulated from the very explosives the obituary condemned. It sits in banks across Europe, a mountain of gold built on gunpowder. Alfred decides to weaponize this wealth for peace. On November 27, 1895, at the Swedish-Norwegian Club in Paris, Alfred sits down at a worn wooden desk. The atmosphere is quiet, dusty, unassuming. There is no fanfare, no press cameras, just an old man with a pen and a terrifying resolve. He drafts his final will and testament. It is a simple document, just 4 pages long, but its contents are revolutionary. With a steady hand, he signs away 94% of his total assets, millions upon millions of crowns. He instructs that the capital be invested in safe securities and the interest distributed annually as prizes to those who, during the preceding year, shall have conferred the greatest benefit to mankind. Physics, chemistry, physiology or medicine, literature, and most shockingly, peace. The merchant of death designates a fortune to reward the champions of fraternity between nations. When he puts down the pen, he has effectively disinherited his relatives and shocked the establishment. But he has done something far more important. He has bought a new soul. He dies a year later, alone, but the plan is set in motion. The world is initially confused, then skeptical, and finally, awed. Today, when we hear the name Nobel, we do not think of twisted metal and shattered bodies on a battlefield. We think of the highest pinnacle of human achievement. We think of Einstein, of intense literary beauty, of the fight against disease, and of the cessation of war. The lazy journalist's mistake in 1888 did not destroy Alfred Nobel. It saved him. It forced him to look into the abyss of his own legacy and build a bridge across it. Every Nobel Prize awarded today is a direct echo of that terrifying morning breakfast, a reminder that it is never too late to rewrite the story the world tells about you.